Wu-Sabat. My name is Nasud Atun Hutep Imreye Atun Reye. Say it so many times. I'm a student teacher of our master teacher, Malachi Kobe, New York, also known as Pt.1. We have these question and answer classes so you can be more familiar with Wu-nuwaupu and get all your answer questions. So if you have any questions, the microphone is open.
Robert.
Yeah.
Earlier you were breaking it down as far as dealing, like you were talking about how Enki, taught Enki about the genetic manipulations. Could you explain exactly how, like maybe the time frame as far as, because at one point I kind of thought that Enki and Enlil and Bess and Fa were the same beings, different, same beings, just in different cultures. What's like the timeline, the time frame? What's the difference between two, and how do they interact with each other?
This was like more than 8,500 years ago. Mm-hmm. But what happened is this: Enki is Pt, mm-hmm. and Enlil is Bess, mm-hmm. only by title. This is like one of the things the master teacher has been over the years. He gave us certain information, but what happened is he didn't give full explanation of it until, because you got to remember you had the devil listening also. And what happened is certain people who got this Sumerian doctrine, which was one of the schools that we was going through, because you got to remember that when the master teacher was teaching the Sumerian doctrine, he was building pyramids on the land. Anybody familiar with that, right? Now, the Sumerian doctrine was supposed to be the final path. As you read something about, we had the beginning, the middle path, and the final path, right? Then why would he be building pyramids if it was about a Sumerian doctrine? This is where a lot of people got caught up in. So a lot of our former teachers ran with that left and thought they had everything figured out. You feel me? So what happened is these were titles. It's like you have more than one Zu-in. Because you have the Zu-in known as Tarnush or Enlil, then you got the Zu-in also known as Nanar, the son of Enlil. You feel me? So what happened is by title, meaning that when you look at the word Enki, his equivalent will be Pt. Just like Bess or Enlil equivalent will be Bess. But what happened is when you're dealing with these beings, these were beings of different orders. Yeah, some of them came from Risk and some of them came from Orion. And what happened is when they crashed down here on the planet Earth, there was different species creating genetic, or doing genetic manipulation of the species that were homegrown on this planet Earth. Meaning that, are you familiar with the movie called Avatar? Mm-hmm. They were kidnapping the Na'vi, right? And they were taking the genes of the Na'vi and mixing it with the human being, so that when a being wanted to put their consciousness in this Na'vi, it had to be compatible by the tone, DNA, and the structure of the body. You feel me? This could be anybody. This is why when the guy's brother committed suicide, they said the twin is so perfect because they have the same genetic makeup. You know what I'm saying? So what happened is, when certain species came here on the planet Earth, they wanted to be able to live here. So what they did is every being wanted to mix in with the Ogdogs, which you know as the beings that came out of the water, the Pt. So they would kidnap and rape and mix their genes in with these original Pt, right? You know what I'm saying? So they was creating their own hybrids. You think, and then they what you call their own avatars, so they can incarnate into those forms and take over and then live on the planet Earth. This is why you see so many different strands of Africans, but you think that we all came from the same mitochondrial DNA, and we don't. There's 7, like our master teacher, Pt.1 taught us back in the days, you have 7 strands of mitochondrial DNA that's in Africa, and only one of them left out of Africa and came to America. You know what I'm saying? This is why you see different tribes of Africa warring against each other because of their hybrids. One species may have more platinum than this species, then this species has more nomos than this species has more draconian than this species, then this species has more nataro than this species, then you wonder why they're not getting along. People looking at, well, how can an African kill an African? Because you're not looking at, so you're looking at them as they're the same, because you got Nigeria, then you got Senegal, then you got Cote d'Ivoire, Then you got Ghana, then you got South Africa, you got Swaziland, then you got Congos, then you got Burkina Faso, then you got Burkina Conakry, then you got Gambia, then you got Sierra Leone, then you got Liberia, and you got Mali, you got Nigeria, you feel me? And you go so on and so on, right? But what happens, a lot of people don't understand is that when you go into these countries, these are different tribes within these countries. Like in Senegal, you got the Olof, or you say the Wolof, and you got the Fulani, and you got Manding. In Ghana, you got what? Akan, Ashanti, Twi, what's the other one? Ga, you know what I'm saying? Iwe. Then you know, and then you go to Nigeria, you got most of the dominant tribes, the Yoruba, the Igbo, and the Fulanis, and the Hausa, you know what I'm saying? Then you go to South Africa, you got the Hausas, and you got the Bantu tribes, and you got the Zulus. So no matter what part of Africa you go to, you got so many different tribes, but these tribes don't look the same. Even though, oh, these are Africans. We're not talking about the same as in like you got the same complexion, woolly hair, but then you're looking at different features. You feel me? Like might see some people with more alkaline features in Mali. So do you call these people Fulanis? But these are Africans who are mixed in with the Portuguese and the Romans and the Spaniards that came over there, right? Then you might have one that have broad features. These are Mandings. They're not as mixed in as the Fulanis. But then these Fulanis will migrate to different parts of Africa, then mix in with other Africans, and then now you create another hybrid or a subspecies with a different feature. Now you got an African who walks around who has a Mandingo feature, but he has also a little bit of pieces of Fulani. Then next you know they call themselves a different tribe. And this is how a new tribe becomes predominant. You feel me? Just like you can say, oh, this guy's he's a Iwe. But it's like, wait a minute. But then you say he looks a little bit Igbo and a little bit Yoruba. See, what happened is when you deal with tribes, people say, well, I'm not accepting you because you're not a full-blooded Fulani. I'm not accepting you because you're not a full-blooded Igbo. So then next you got a person that's stuck in between two different tribes and say, well, I just start my own tribe and I'll call myself a Yoruba. You feel me? And then when you look at a lot of Yoruba tribes, they look like a lot of Igbos and a lot of Fulanis. But it's the combination, and you're watching this going all over Africa, different tribes mixing it with colonial or Europeans, and they bring in a different feature and so on. So what happened is, when Inky and them were coming here, and the other species were coming here, they was breeding their own hybrids for them to incarnate into what you call avatars. You feel me? So this is when he wanted to perfect a formula on how to go into the DNA of the go inside the mitochondrial DNA and the certain things in it, so it'd be able to stick or grow, cling on into that DNA, so they were able to hide who the beings really were. You know what I'm saying? And they were able to reproduce more of them. You feel me? But they couldn't get the formula down because they was mostly the time working with Mokasu or Caucasoid genes. And because they were a disease due to leprosy, it was causing a lot of problems. So what happened is 8,500 years ago, Nehershag or Mother Ninti started to use her own DNA to breed and ship tea over in Mesopotamia. She fell, which left many deformed creatures on Pa-Kawat Taha, which is the planet Earth, who could not have offspring or yield a child unless they mix or rape those who are pure Nagaro, which is us, right? Let me see that book we did, the new one. What page? Are we on that page? Okay, I got you. You know what I'm saying? So, meanwhile, in Africa, Mother Sakumet, which is the wife of Ptah, right? Or consort, daughter of Re, or you know as Re or Ra, you know what I'm saying? Was successful in her breeding 24,000 years ago, before 4000 BC. So when you talk about the breeding of species of the Wu-nuwaupu, you're dealing with the Anunnaki. And those were the what you call it, the red, ruddy, pinkish beings that was coming out of or you call it Adamites. This is the people that you talk about in your Bible. You know what I'm saying? This is the origin of your Caucasian. This is why they always say that Adam and Eve was created 6,000 years ago. Now when we read the Bible, the Torah, and the Quran, you're looking at plagiarized stories, right? Okay. That came from ancient stories of black people, because they were so busy translating and plagiarizing it that they were actually still depicting the biblical story that they were creating as brown-skinned people. You know what I'm saying? If you look at the region, but the creation that's in these Bibles were talking about Caucasoids. But when you look at it, you look at our old doctrine of the school of the Ansars, when you read the Book of the Dead called the Bible and the Book of the Dead called the Holy Quran, it's always show you as them being as black people, because this was a plagiarism that was going from the ancient records of the Inu-Elish and the Gilgamesh epics. You feel what I'm saying? So what happened is, now you look inside these books and you're not realizing that what they're saying is black were actually were Caucasians, but they put it under the form of these being black. The Israelites are black in Egypt. That would make common sense. You know what I'm saying? Or the area, because that's where mostly we are predominantly from. But what happened is, a lot of these Mukasus or Hikkasutus came into Egypt and took over certain regions also. So now you're being plagiarized with a Babylonian and Mesopotamian story with an ancient Kemet, which is, Kemet, which is ancient Egypt, what they call Kemet. And now they combine both stories together. And this is where you get the woolly hair and brown skin, and you combine both stories. But actually, the 6,000 years ago was talking about the creation of the Caucasian race.
Just 6,000 years ago?
Yeah, that's why they also our religion always talk about 6,000 years, because this is when they were grafted and created. You know what I'm saying? So when Mother Nature was creating them, that was it was about, let me see, when she started mixing them, it was 8,500 years ago that she started mixing her genes and was trying to create the perfect being. But when she finally got the formula down, this was 6,000 years ago that she was able to graft the Caucasian race. You feel me? But what happened is, when you was in ancient Egypt, Ptah and Sakumet were actually already experimenting 24,000 years ago, and they already created the perfect hybrid, which is us, that came out of the waters. And they mixed their gene in with them. You know what I'm saying? So Enki came to Africa with his son Marduk and grandson Nabu, and he mixed his seed and studied under Ptah, and returned and passed on the knowledge to Ninti. She took the 7 sisters, now that she had the right knowledge, the 7 birth mothers, and bred each until she succeeded in a new creature who could procreate. You feel what I'm saying? This was an update that was given weeks ago by our master teacher, Partner Babi Anun, right? Now we got a new book out called Mitochondrial DNA, right? That came out last night. And it also goes into it like this. It says that all these interceptions account for 18 plus 18 plus 1, or 37 genes of the mitochondrial DNA. 37 of your genes, your gateway to transformation. Now, the initial approach of the Anunnaki, the Hershag or Ninti, sister of Enki and Lil, and daughter of Anu, was to break up the chromosome into pieces of DNA, inject those pieces into the cells, and then search for ones that could replicate unaided. However, there was a problem because of the diseased genes of the Kakasu. Any DNA pieces she injected immediately infiltrated and hijacked the replication centers. So Enki with Ptah of Pa-Natharu in Afafraeka, Africa, came with the solution. Ptah knew that the circular pieces of DNA cannot hop onto chromosomes because they had no sticky end. So he concealed it in the Hershag pieces of DNA inside a circular structure. That plan worked immediately. Ptah found pieces of DNA that could replicate under their own steam. They make the DNA pieces big enough. Nearly any DNA piece larger than 9,000 base pair is able to replicate. The Enki of the Anunnaki did his part as the Ninti or Nehershag made the mistake. Once done, they gave it to the Kamaud or Pleiadians, so now they had the blueprint also and inserted artificial structure protein to the bacterial DNA. So this right here, when you read that, that's talking about how the Pleiadians, which you call known as the Astar Command, the beings that came from Aldebaran, were working under the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki are the ones that created these beings first. And at the wild, these actually started eating these beings. Because these were the overlords. You know what I'm saying? But then these Pleiadians came out, look, we need to come up with a solution. We don't want you to continue eating us. So what we do is we'll come to this planet and we'll start creating a new life form called a Makasu. So you can eat them instead of eating us. This is your food for the God doctrine that you find in your Holy Quran and your Holy Bible. You feel me? So this is where the confusion comes in with the Enki and Ptah thing.
So I should look at, instead of looking, well, no, let me backtrack. So when you were talking about the Ogdoads, the beings raping the Ogdoads and making avatars.
Making hybrids.
Making hybrids, sorry.
Yeah.
Hybrids.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so the hybrids would be who would the hybrids be exactly?
Everybody. Mostly everybody on this planet, 90% of people on this planet are hybrids. Because you have the pure Nagaro will be the beings that came out of Uganda. Then you find some of them that's in the Ottoman Islands in India called the Jawa descendants in the it's another tribe, I can't remember exactly. It was called the Jangil. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, no, okay.
You know what I'm saying? These
When you said that they were raping who was raping who to make the who was raping who?
All the species, every species that was coming down here were abducting them.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
So what happened? They were kidnapping them and taking the life forms off the planet. Some were taking, and mix their seed in so they can create their own. See what happened is this. There's a movie called War of the Worlds. Have you ever seen it with Tom Cruise?
Yeah.
Anybody saw the movie?
Tom Cruise or Kevin Costner?
Tom Cruise, War of the World.
Oh, War of the World.
Yeah.
Water World.
No, not Water World. That was yeah. And what happened is these aliens were destroying the United States, and the military couldn't do nothing about it, right? But what happened is, what killed the aliens? Do anybody remember?
Atmosphere.
The atmosphere, and they ate something
The blood.
that they were supposed to eat because their bodies didn't have any antibodies that was built up to combat the bacteria that this planet Earth produces. You hear me? So what happened is you can't go to Mars or any other planet outside this atmosphere and just eat stuff because your body don't have the antibodies to produce immunities so you don't get sick and die. This is why when you leave out of America, they say you got to get immunization shots because certain things in certain countries will kill you and make you sick. You feel me? So they give you small doses of it and inject it into you so your body can build up antibodies for it so you don't get sick when you go over there. So what happened is with defeating the extraterrestrial is the antibodies. I mean the bacteria in the atmosphere. You feel me? So what happened is these certain beings know this, so they had to genetically engineer hybrid bodies so they'll be able to survive here on this planet.
Yeah, okay. Now, when they're trying to survive on this planet, and they're trying to repopulate, they're trying
to take it over. Same way the Caucasian leaves Europe, and said, well, we didn't use up all our natural resources. So now I'm going to travel to your country and figure out what you got, and if you got something I need, I'm going to colonize. And once I colonize, I start wiping out the indigenous people of that land and take over their natural resources.
So why?
Extraterrestrials do the same thing.
Yeah, I got you.
This is your Superman story.
I got you. So question going back, so why would Bess and the Pleiadians working together? I know he was upset.
Because they created us. We didn't hear earlier, I said they cut a deal. Meaning that, look, we don't want you to eat us. So we'll graft and create a new food source for you. It's like the chicken said, look, the chicken woke up one day, look, I don't want to be eaten. I'm going to create some other new form of chickens so you don't eat me and my people.
That makes sense.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to cut a deal. I'm going to go here and I'm going to create a farm on this planet and I'm going to breed a new species of food source for you to eat. So you don't eat me. This is your food for the God doctrine that you find in your scriptures. God said, oh, offered up sacrifices. I love the way it smelled, but this is a spiritual body. How can you smell and you have no nostrils? You feel me? He tells you to sprinkle blood on the altar. If you go inside this book called Mitochondrial DNA, it shows you different scriptures where they actually telling this God about eating flesh. You feel me? What page is that on sermon? The page where they scriptures when they're showing you different okay, it's right here. If you go to write these down, these are scriptures right here. 2 Kings, put that on the board. You're gonna put them on the board. 2 Kings 6-20, chapter 6, verse 28 to 29. Leviticus 26, 29. Now I'm just bringing them in class. You can put it on the board. I'm gonna give you the book in a second. Deuteronomy 28:53, Lamentations 2:20, Jeremiah 19:9, and Genesis 24:3. Here you go. You know what I'm saying? So what happened is these are actual scriptures where this blood god is telling these people to eat flesh of their sons and daughters. You feel me? You understand what I'm saying? That was it. Is there a question?
No, I got some more.
Yeah, go ahead. Ain't no problem. Go ahead, brother. Hey, listen, you can ask as many questions as you want, bro. This is what we here for. This is what we do. You want to ask 100 questions, we here for that. Go ahead, brother.
Well, I just want to piggyback
to
what he's talking about.
So where the spiritual side comes in, if these beings, they were physically creating beings, right? Physical beings.
Which one? You talk about the Caucasians?
The Caucasian and those before the Caucasian, like the Africans and stuff like that. Okay. So where the spiritual side of being came from?
You said the spiritual side?
Yeah.
You talk about the interdimensional being. That's what you're saying. See, what happened is we got caught up in the because we speak English so fluently, we depend on that definitions. So when we say spiritual, we're looking at this as your etheric or your another being or your counterpart that exists in another dimension. You know what I'm saying? But what happens is in order for it to communicate here in the physical form, it incarnates into flesh. You call it avatar. We call it manzal, which is an incarnated being. And out of it, we call it ilat mutajessid. You feel me? So what happened is, you talk about your incarnated being that comes into your physical flesh resides in another dimension.
Okay.
But in order for you to be able to move as a physical being, it needs a vessel, which you call the physical flesh.
Okay.
It's like my brothers gave me soul, spirit, soul. They said, do you remember all I said to you of them? You as male and female. Wu-nuwaupu told you of Ba, which is soul. Rawa, which is soul. You know what I'm saying? And I spoke to you about Ka'a, spirit, and Nafesh, spirit. About Akat, etheric being, and Ku, over soul. And you ask again about these parts of your existence. Pa Ku is the over being. Pa Akat is the etheric being. Pa Ba is the creative, expressive being. And Pa Rawa is the breath of the living being. Pa Ka is the exoplasmic being. And Pa Nafas is a living being, and Pa Katat is a physical being. And Pa Kabatu, demigods that are children, Pa Nathar are called angelic being, both agreeable and agreeable. So this is the different stages of how it creates, which makes you as a being. You know what I'm saying? The different levels. You understand what I'm saying?
Comprehend.
Now finish your question.
So the spirit being that incarnate into a body,
Yeah.
it's already being.
No, the spirit being doesn't incarnate into your body. The spirit being will give you life and force to be able to move in your physical body. You're talking about your soul that incarnates into your physical body.
Okay. So, all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Later. Pick it up later.
No, go ahead.
I get my thought.
You got to formulate the question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, what I'm trying to say, okay,
Yeah.
the soul able to incarnate into a body.
Yeah.
Okay. So, like inlaid Inky,
Yeah.
who had created a subspecies, so to speak.
Yeah.
He made it available that the soul could come and incarnate it into the physical
Yeah.
body.
The etheric beings can take over anybody who feel like it. They incarnate.
Okay.
Yeah. This is how they. Okay, I see where you're going there with the question. Because the beings, physical original body ain't for this planet. So when they come here, they use another form that they created, and then they incarnate into that particular body.
Okay.
Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah.
I understand. I had a question I asked Pops years ago about that.
Yes.
Yeah. This is why they call themselves avatars. When the 200 fallen angels came down, they incarnated into other form because their original body ain't from this planet. You know what I'm saying? Just like certain Riskins are not for this planet because they have a tri-solar system. This is a single solar system. We only have one sun. So their body's not adapting to this sphere. So they had to create a new body for them so they incarnate here. And this is why they had to put a gland inside these new bodies because they needed this, in order for them to survive on this planet Earth, they needed the actual 4 higher senses to survive here on this planet.
Is religion true?
Okay. When you say religion,
Like, as in, like, well, like, are gods real?
you said what? Go ahead, say what you got to say. Go ahead. You said, is religion real? Is God real? That's what you're saying.
Well, yeah.
According to who doctrine though? Because everybody had their own. You need to say this. Everybody had their own. Everybody had their own way of life. When you go to India, they practice. They worship millions of deities. You know what I'm saying? Or Hindu deities, right? When you go to China, they worship Confucius. They might worship Buddha. When you go to America, they worship different gods, whether it's under Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. You go to Saudi Arabia, they worship Allah. When you go to Jerusalem or Lebanon, Syria, they worship certain, or Israel, they worship Yahweh. You know You know what I'm saying? You go to Persia or Horo Mazda. When you go to Rome, Italy, they worship Jehovah, Yahweh, you know, so, or Jesus, you feel me? Or, you know, like, or Greece, Zeus, Apollo, so on. So when you deal with God, you're dealing with different cultures and with their perception of their most high or their most highest deity. You feel what I'm saying? It's like if I say basketball right now, and I say to you, who's the best basketball player of all time? Who's the first thing you'll say?
LeBron James.
Okay, you say LeBron James because you're how old are you, about 17?
14.
Oh, you're 14, so you never saw Jordan play, really? So you never saw Michael Jordan play? Huh? Now, back in the day when Jordan came out, we used to say the same thing. They said, no, Dr. J. Because a lot of people didn't never see Dr. J play. And before that, it was who? Bill Russell. And before that, it was who? Wilt Chamberlain. So it's like everybody got their own who they think is the greatest, right? Now, if I say golf, who's the greatest? If I say tennis, who I say? Those are deities. You feel me? Because they are so, they're like masters of their craft. You feel what I'm saying? If I say boxing, you'll say who? See, everybody had to see, you have to be older for that. Now, some people might say Mayweather. Some people say Bernard Hopkins. Somebody say Lennox Lewis. You know, Tyson destroyed himself a long time ago. He's not even going down in history. You hear me? But well, he was a dominant force when he came out. It's just that after the rape charges and so-called accusations, it kind of destroyed his being, and he couldn't focus as a boxer. He lost his mojo. But anyway, so what happened is that you're dealing with a deity in that sport. But what happened is when the European came into Africa and saw how we were on those type of levels, not as sports, but on a level on scientific breakthroughs of agriculture, architectural structures, and everything that we did, they was like, these guys are amazing. They doing stuff that I have never saw that I only thought what happened in Mount Olympus. So when they went to Egypt, they thought they was looking at Olympus. They were looking at the Thor and the gods and manifesting in human form, building pyramids and stuff like that. So these guys must be gods. Because they were worshiping spooks or something that wasn't real. You feel me? And what happened is you as an African in America has been given these doctrines through a thing called faith and belief. Just believe in it and you go to heaven. But you never question like, well, who created God? How do you know God is real? They said, well, you have to have faith and believe in him. But then when you read the God stories in this book called the Holy Bible and the Holy Quran, this God is a very vicious being. He sets himself up to be in good situations where he look good. Like, well, I'm going to create a tree, and you're not supposed to eat on it. And if you do eat on it, you shall die. But why put the tree there in the first place? Why put a tree there you couldn't eat? You couldn't put thorns on the tree or nothing like that, like you do the roses. And, you know what I mean? You couldn't put something to protect the tree. Why even have the tree there in the first place? You know what I mean? It would eliminate the whole problem. First of all, why even have a devil in the garden? Because before Adam and Eve was created, this guy was kicked out of heaven. So if he was kicked out of heaven, right? You mean to tell me that God didn't know that he's going to turn? He's the all-knowing, omnipresent, omnipotent, right? He should already know that this guy's going to turn back. But how do you turn back? Where did he get the concept of doing wickedness from? Listen, this is an all-loving God, all-powerful, everything is good. Where did the devil get the concept of doing wicked things from? How did ego and pride come into place if there's no such thing as ego and pride? Right? It's only one person could have gave it to him, right? Because there's no way that he can sit there and decide, I just create a new emotion that you never know, that you don't know about God. It's called ego and pride. But God should know that because he's all-knowing. Right? But this is what we were taught over the years, and it became religion. And what religion do, it dumbs you down to not question facts or reality, and you just sit there and go by blind faith and just believe, because if I'm a good person, I have a personal relationship with God, I talk to God, and he steers me in a good way, I got nothing to worry about. But then when you get Trayvon Martin, or somebody in your family do, you're like, what was God at then? You know what I'm saying? Or if you get ran over, or somebody dies in a plane crash, and you go, oh, praise the Lord, I didn't die, but 400 people dead. Then where's God at then? So why is that God, all of a sudden, he couldn't save these people, but he saved all these people back in biblical time. But all of a sudden, God doesn't do miracles anymore. But then when something happens, you say, oh, God did that. But then when something bad happens, you don't say nothing. oh, I must be weak in my faith. I said, dude, your faith is strong. You do a lot for a lot of people. But then all of a sudden, when something goes wrong, you say, well, I must have been slipping. This is religion. This is what religion breeds. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to my brother Simitut Sihitep Kaut.
What's that? How you doing?
Yeah, no question?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there such thing as an afterlife?
Is there such thing as an afterlife? Okay, good question. As a matter of fact, hold on. All right, when you say afterlife, can you tell me, based on your perception of what that is, what does it mean to you?
Heaven, hell.
Heaven and hell?
Yeah.
All right. So you want to know if heaven and hell is real? All right. Do you come from a Christian background or Muslim background or what?
Well, basically, I was born in a Christian home, but I think I'm starting to study Islam. Then I will stuff that to be here today.
Okay. All right, all right, all right. So you was raised in a Christian home. So your home was Christian and the people in it. That's a joke. Joke, so you can't. You know what I'm saying? No. All right. The idea that you have of heaven and hell, number one, right, is given to us by way of the religion, right? It tells us that heaven is up and hell is down, right? Right. So what we have to do is we have to asking questions about that ideology, that theory, that za'am or opinion that's been given to us first. All right. So let's ask this question. If heaven is up, was the devil living in heaven at a point in time, according to Christianity?
Yeah.
All right. So if the devil was living in heaven at a particular point in time, right, and then the devil got cast down from heaven, which is up, right, where did the devil get cast down to? Earth. All right, so to the devil, would earth be hell, being that it's down from where he used to be in heaven, which is up?
Yes.
Because the way that we've been taught, when the master teacher asked a question in a book that he wrote a while back called What and Where is Hell, he explained that hell can also be a state of mind. Like right now, you've got some people who are literally in a burn unit somewhere, right? You got children inside of a burn victim hospital right now. They've been burned up. They got third-degree burns and everything. They got to keep getting, oil and everything put on it so that they can try to heal up. But they're hurting right now. Is that hell for them right now? And that's a reality that they're dealing with. They're dealing where pain is. They're going through stress, right? Our people as a whole, right? We're going through a lot of problems globally where we can't actually come together as a people, right? Is that not a form of hell? All right, so you don't have to have an afterlife in order for there to be a hell. You understand? If we're looking at what hell means relatively speaking. Like if you get fussed at and your mom was fussing at you and you say, oh, she's giving me hell, you didn't have to wait to die to have that happen. You see what I'm saying? So, and the master also explained it like this. With those who have all the resources here, instead of them waiting on an afterlife to try to get to a heaven, what do? They build their heaven here. Right? You always see them when they got smiles, they got nice cars, this, that, and the other. So for them, this isn't hell. To them, this is heaven to them. When they go to their home. You follow? That's how it happens. And yeah, this is great. Patriarch, chapter 3, right here. This is an older one. It's called Hell on Earth. Author, of course, by Patna Babianu. And he says in there, he says, there's no such place as burning hell's fire created by Patna Thought for you. Our ancestors didn't create a type of hell for us. See, the thought of hell, right, or the thought of you being punished if you do this, or if you do that, or if you don't do this, or if you don't do that, was actually created by beings in Mesopotamia. They created that so that they would be able to control people by way of fear. Fear is a controlling factor. See, and the thing is, if people can get you into a position where you're so fearful of them that you don't ask questions about the reality of a thing, they can control how you move. That's what's happened with religion. In our language, we don't have a language for religion. The word that we use that most closely relates to it is called za'an, which means opinion. What's happened is we've taken other people's opinions of a thing, and it's become literally, well, it is literally a mythology to us, because all the things that they tell us to fear, they have no proof of existence, no confirmation of its reality. You understand? So in that sense, no, there's not a hell afterlife insofar as that, right? Or a heaven afterlife insofar as that, right? But what if you're ignorant of who and what you are right now, right? Us being totally in the dark as to who we are. Like, I ask some people on a regular basis when I'm talking to my people, what's your nationality? The fact that you are totally disconnected from knowing who you are or where you come from is also another form of hell. Ignorance is hell. The fact that you don't know is hell. The fact that when you're praying and you because you decide to, or you've been given a religion that you don't even know if it's going out, is almost the same as Santa Claus, right? The idea of Santa Claus says what? He sees you when you're sleeping, right? He knows when you're awake, right? He knows if you've been bad or good. So what? So be good for goodness sake, right? So you got this being who's supposed to be riding around on a sleigh with some flying reindeer, right? And he's wanting to go and give gifts to all the little good girls and boys, right? And he hears it whenever somebody's talking to him all throughout the year. You write letters. You send them where? To the North Pole. Up. Right? To Santa Claus. He's going to get them. He knows what you want. He knows if you lied on, to your parents or whatever. Right? So these are the type of ideas that's been given to us that we've been forced to accept. And the fear of hell as far as afterlife is one of those. You understand? Now let's take it another step further. How old are you? 14, okay. When you were born, right, did you begin to live or did you begin to die? Just thought. Where's your stepfather at? Right here? Okay, cool. All right. When you first took your first breath, when you came from your mother, right, did you begin to live or did you begin to die? Yeah. So before you began to die, were you already living? It can seem confusing, right? But this is what's important. We have to understand energy can't be destroyed. When we talk about the fact that we have a spirit and we are a soul, right? That means before we took on a physical body, right? We already existed. The moment that we came out into this physical realm is when we became trapped up under these physical laws. Your physical body now needs to breathe. Your heartbeat is literally a ticking clock, right? So now you're here after you were already living in your most eternal state. Now you came down into this physical realm so that you can experience this. But when this physical body dies, will your spirit be dead? It doesn't need oxygen to live, does it? What about your mind? Does it need oxygen? What about your soul? Does it need oxygen? No. You understand? So yeah, there's an afterlife. You're actually living it right now because you were already living. Now you're starting to die. I know that might be kind of crazy for you, I'm 14, you know what I'm saying? But the reality is at 14, in our tribes and things of that nature, we understand that by the time you turn 13, you stepped into manhood. That's one of the things that's messed us up as a people, myself included. We go by other people's rules rather than by natural nature's laws as to who and what we are. We become men at that age. That's what nature says. But when we have Caucasoid rules that tell us that we're a man when we become 18, we're a man when we become 21, because I can drink at 21, because I can buy cigarettes at 18. We literally base manhood on the things that we can do that's destructive to ourselves because we're following a destructive being. add a little more in there so that you can get the answer and then be able to build another question, you know, once you sit down. Or if it's already in your head right now, we can take it.
Oh, you answered, pretty much answered it.
Okay, good to go. Any more questions? How you doing, your brother?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing my best.
Okay. I understand the concept of heaven and hell no Mars created, but
Mhm.
when I actually die, does my spirit go over here, or what happens to my spirit or my soul?
Good question. Okay. You have what we call a morphogenetic field. You are made up of, you know, energy, which ends up slowing down in vibratory frequency in order to be able to become, you know, this physical matter here. Let's get into this. Let me ask you this first. What is spiritual?
Can't answer that.
You can't answer that, or you just don't have the information to
I
answer?
don't have the information. So
Okay, so let's inform you. Okay? What has to happen is, as our master teacher has explained, we'd have to get to a point to where our definition of spiritual changes. Right? So here's how he taught us. How old are you?
17.
17. Good to go. All right. Let's say, okay, see this line? It's almost a line. Something like a line. I'm not an artist like that. All right. Let's say at this middle point, right? Are you familiar with hydrogen?
Yes.
All right. Hydrogen is called, or they see it as being H1. Hydrogen is an element, right? All right. It's made up of, everything physical is made up of atoms, right? Atoms. For the longest period of time, whenever they talk about atoms, like when you're talking about, you know, what's that white guy with the crazy hair?
Einstein.
Exactly. German dude that we know his name because of, you know, science, and they pump him up, he's a god. Anyway, what he thought, and what many of them thought, was that the atom was the smallest building block of life, right? So they saw that as being the smallest thing of material or matter, right? That's the smallest level of physicality, right? But what are atoms made up of? Atoms are made up of,
Protons, neutrons, electrons.
exactly, protons, neutrons, electrons, right? So you got protons, you got neutrons, you got electrons. What are these called? They're called subatomic particles, right? Sub means beneath or below, right? So these are basically sub atoms or material below the lowest physical matter. So that means when they say that this is the lowest physical matter, but it's made up of something, that means that there's something lower than that. Then when we get into talking about those subatomic atoms being protons, neutrons, and electrons, we found out that there are even more energy bundles, if you would, that's called like quarks, biaps, zeelies or zees, and so forth and so on. And it goes further and further down. So as the master teacher explained, if H1 or hydrogen is where physical begins on this side going forward, hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, so forth and so on, to all the physical matter that you know of now. Everything that came before that on this side of hydrogen, which is totally energy, is actually spiritual. So it had to come from, it's actually the situation where you have from nothing, no thing, into something. And when he explained something, he explained it with some, or as it has the ability to be some, wave. So it had a number. On this side of it, there's no N-O period, number. So this is existence before creation, right? So now we're talking about redefining what spiritual is. So you already know that spiritual exists based on your admittance of the fact that you know that there's protons, neutrons, and electrons alone. That's below physical based on what they're already explaining. You're totally into energy now. even though that's also energy, it's just at a lower rate of vibration. You understand?
Gotcha.
It's different stages of matter, right? The master used to explain it to us like this, like when you talk about water being H2O, right? H2O. You have water, which is, if you add energy to it, it speeds its vibration up, right? This energy be manifested as heat. You know, hot pot on the stove turns into steam. Raises, it's moving faster, right? At a lower rate, it's in a liquid form. So you have gas, you have liquid, and then if you freeze it, that slows it down. It becomes what? Solid. So you've got solid, liquid, gas, 3 different stages of matter. The stage that you can't see in the physical form is vibrating at its highest frequency. So with you, you've slowed yourself down into matter. And what's happening is once you die, once this physical body dies, you let that solid part of you, if you want to use that term, you let that particular part of you go, then you move on into just full spiritual existence. You understand? On the other side of hydrogen. You exist there now as well. Why? Because you're using a mind. Can your mind be quantified or summed up? Do you know where your mind is? Can you show me where your mind is? Is that your mind or is that your brain?
Brain.
Right, that's your brain. That's not your mind. Your mind and your brain are 2 different things. Your mind exists on the mental realm. That's spiritual. So you already know that there's spiritual reality. The master said this. He said, touch yourself. Do you know that you exist?
Yeah.
Right at that point, you know that there are 2 of you immediately. Because there's the you that knows that the you physical exists. You understand? So that's where your spirit is already. Outside of physical. So will you continue to exist? Yes. Does that answer the question for you?
It does.
It looked like you're stirring up for another one. Go ahead.
So, to sum it all up, when I die, I should become a higher level of energy.
Yes and or no. Why? Because just like, matter of fact, as a matter of fact, you are existing in your physical body, but you're also existing, like I said, on the spiritual realm at the same time. We can do things that can hurt ourselves physically here. And at the same time, you can also do things to hurt yourself spiritually by operating on lower forces. For instance, the master teacher explained that just like magnetism, electromagnetism, with our mind power being the most powerful force in the universe, or balanced universes, right? Attraction, lust, desires, that's just like magnetism on the physical side of things. So what ends up happening is you have some people who may be so attached mentally to physical things that when their physical body stops breathing, that light goes out, that body becomes cold, they don't let go of this physical abode. And so they end up being trapped here, end up being stuck here. And then that becomes a form of hell for them because they're stuck. They can't ascend. That's why you have people who report things like seeing, apparitions in a graveyard and things of that nature. Because you have spirit beings who are stuck and you don't just get to ascend by default. You understand? That's not something that happens just by default. You have to learn, to let go of desire of all these things here, to understand the superfluity of life, which means that it's very fleeting. It passes quickly. But you're here to learn on this level. And that's why Wu-nuwaupu is called our spiritual science, because it gives us an understanding and a psychic self-defense so that we won't be fed on, by these lower forces. Or as we have an actual fact, it's called feeding the forces, which teaches us about being able to connect with our own spiritual ancestors and forces that work in favor with us and with our nature, so that we'll be able to be guided in a direction that's best for us rather than being guided in a direction that works against us. You understand? All right?
Okay.
I don't mean to sound ignorant about this question, but does Pt.1 teach us to be racist or prejudiced against other
Good
races
question.
or the white race?
Good question. The master teacher explained in an update. You can go to Wu-nuwaupu.com. Have you ever been on Wu-nuwaupu.com yet? All right. There's a class that starts like on April 16th. It's talking about inclination, or what direction one is inclined to behave as, right? It says, by knowing the mixtures indicated by one's outer appearance, you can get an idea of the kinds of voices that they may be listening to from inside of them. So race matters, right? But this is not racism. This is ontology. So when we say we want to separate ourselves genetically from a race or protect our genes from a race, that's not racism insofar as the emotional aspect. As he said back in the day, that would be right racism, which would be us protecting our seed, us protecting the purity of our race. And he also said it another way. If somebody calls you racist, then you can take that as well and say, well, if I play piano, I'm a pianist. If I play violin, I'm a violinist. If I study and I care about my race, then by that definition, you can call me a racist. But we don't operate by hate, because hate is self-destructive. We just operate in an understanding. Like somebody asked me before, are you prejudiced against white people? I said, when it comes down to white people, I don't have to be prejudiced. I'm post-judiced. All of the decisions that I make as far as how I'm going to deal with the Caucasoid race is based on actions that they've done to my people previously. You understand? I'm not in a position to be just hating just because I hate the color of the skin or what have you. I make my decisions based on the fact that reasoning says if it's within their nature to do all the things that they've done to us as a people around the world, then it would be best for me to make the decision to avoid them. As Patrick says, avoidance is best. So that's the direction that comes from. We're not taught to be racist, no. We're taught to have a level of, we're taught to understand all other races and then respect all other races that respect our race. So we'll respect you, or we'll take a second look at you insofar as that, as long as you have a level of respect for who and what we are. Overstood. All right, good to go.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, I'm going to pass it off to my good brother, my Achet Atumriye. Yes, that's that.
I remember before reading some actual facts. It was basically breaking it down how like the Pleiadians and the Best, they were working together on the planet. Now, and I was also remembering, I can't remember exactly what actual fact is right now.
I'm sorry, you said the Pleiadians and who else?
Yeah, and Best, they were working together.
Oh, and Best.
Yeah, they're working together.
Okay.
Okay, and I also remember, I can't remember which Patriarch it was, or maybe, no, I think it was actual fact, but it was breaking it down how that the overlords were upset at the Caucasians, or the Tamil, because of the way that they were treating us, and they were basically saying they're not really, that they were leaving, and they weren't really helping them anymore. Is there going to be a time frame in which maybe what's the circumstance now dealing with what's happening in the world today, dealing with those overlords and Daru, as far as the interaction with moving us forward to us elevating as a group?
Okay. Bear with me, I'm really trying to understand your question just a bit. And if I'm not mistaken, the affirmation that you expressed actually came from the book Atlantis, where it spoke a lot about Best, spoke a lot about the Pleiadians, and how the Natharu observed what they were doing, to here on this planet, to the beings here, and chose to watch at the time, and even how Best was angered by those he was watching over, basically. But to understand your question, you may have to
Reword?
express that a little bit better.
Okay, all right.
Really, more so the last part. Let me see if I can understand you correctly. Are you saying what is the relationship now between Panataru and the Platines?
As far as the evolution of us today, meaning if they left, okay, and they're no more giving any help to the Hecatocox or the Tamilans, okay.
He's talking about the Platines,
Pleiadians.
their overlords,
Yeah,
pretty much
overlords,
deserting them.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
deserting them.
And as far as they did that, if I'm not mistaken, when I was reading, I can't remember. I think it was a actual fact, but Master Teacher was saying that they were upset at the way they were treating us. That's one of the reasons why they left. Correct?
You talk about the Platines?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Where are we at now as far as the evolution of us, moving forward as a race and the assistance that we're receiving? Because it's like the overlords were here, they left. Now, where are we at as far as that goes?
Okay. I think I understand your question. Where we are right now is, we have to remember, our master teacher, Partner Babianun, is a transmitter. He's here to give us information to carry us on into the next 25,000 year cycle. You know what I'm saying? So at this moment, we have to diagnose ourselves and ask that question. Are we doing our job to wake our people up? Because the bottom line is this: as long as we are around the Mukasu, as long as we're integrating with them, as long as we're participating in their world, right, it's hard for them to be removed. And it's harder for us to progress as a whole, as a people. So where we are now, we have to do our job. Each one has to teach one. And you have to trust the process of nature, of how things are moving. We've been given patarak, we've been given the actual fact, and we are quite, what's the word I'm looking for? We have a lot on our table. And it's up to us to exercise it and work it, you know what I'm saying, and really live our culture, and really teach it to our people. That's where we are right now as a whole. It's a personal question, and it's a diagnostic question as well. You have to observe us as a whole and say, okay, where do I stand in this, and how do we move forward?
Okay. Dealing earlier, you were talking about the different genes in Africa, etc. Now, it seems like in our race, there's not only different genetic features, but there's different mentalities and actions.
Absolutely.
And I would like to call, let's just say, for lack of a better term, a nice way to put it, we have degenerates, in the race that their actions are degenerate actions, especially compared to more conscious people. I'll just put it that way. Now, is that mixture of these different races, the mixing of those different genes, a part of the degenerate behavior? Is that the separation of us, of our actions, the negative genetics that's inside of us, as opposed to the more pure genetics that are moving forward? Besides also diet and other things that go in there. Is that what we're seeing here? A separation, kind of like the sheep and
What's interesting is a few weeks ago, last time I taught, somebody else asked me that same question, and this is about Africa. It seems to keep coming up. What we have to remember about Africa, right? Not only was we kidnapped from Africa and brought here and experimented on for the last 400 years to be the American Negro, but also Mother Africa was also colonized, right? And influenced first by the Arabs or the Turks, the Berbers. They came in and brought their way of life and their influence, right? Next you have the Mokasu and the different species of them who came over there and influenced Africa also and spread their disease and their germ there. Mental diseases and physical defects. A lot of the tribes or newly tribes in Africa that formed after those invasions took on certain characteristics that we may not even relate to. Also, you have to keep in mind, the thing about Africa, you know what I'm saying, is this: they hold strong to their culture. And when you fuse their culture and this new religion or this new mental disease, you know what I'm saying, together, it's very, very difficult to break.